Hi, everybody. We're so happy to have you with us today. It's New York Textile Month, all of September, which is an initiative founded by Lee Edelcourt, who needs no introduction. New York Textile Month is a festival designed to celebrate textiles and bring together museums, galleries, retailers, design studios, independent practitioners, students, and all of you as a community. Welcome to Textile TV. This is the series we're on today, and it's a series of conversations with leaders in textiles, art, and design. I'm your host for today, Sagarika Sundaram. I'm an artist and deputy editor of this year's issue of Talking Textiles, which is an annual publication we release. I host conversations every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Today, I'm absolutely delighted to invite design pioneer Suzanne Tick to Textile TV. Suzanne, for the past 20 years, has built a textile practice that forms a cornerstone of the American design industry. As principal of Tick Studio in New York City, her award-winning commercial practice starts with the textile medium and goes far beyond. She creates upholstery for Luum, a brand that launched under Suzanne's leadership. She creates carpeting and flooring solutions for industry giant Tarkett, and also interior glass for Skyline Design. We're going to hear all about that today. Suzanne's approach to textiles starts at the structural level with yarn, creating fabric constructions that marry with the architectural spaces they occupy. Bold graphics, color transitions, woven textures. Suzanne's work is rooted deeply in concept. Today, we are going to learn more about the thinking behind her work and visit the legendary townhouse, which is home to her studio and her personal art practice. And this is a space where I had the opportunity to work for a year, so I'm so excited to take you through it. The format is as follows. Suzanne will take us through a brief overview of her practice, after which we'll move into a conversation. We'll then be taking questions from all of you, so do feel free to use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. This video is going to be recorded and uploaded on our YouTube channel, so please feel free to share it with your friends and come back to it later. Suzanne, I'm going to hand it over to you now. Welcome. We're so delighted to have you with us today.
Thank you, Sag. It's so nice to see you. I miss your presence in the studio. It's always so fun having you ask so many amazing questions, and that's the best. It allows us to really dig deep into what we're doing and explaining things. And as a student, it was great. So I'm going to just take it on, and I'll start from here. So this is where I live and work. And so a lot of people ask how I'm doing during this time of COVID. And I kind of hibernate anyway in this work-live environment. So it has been challenging, and some effects has affected me in some ways, but otherwise, I think I've weared through it all right. The building here was built in 1920, and I've been here since 2000. I was lucky to find this building. It had graffiti all over it. It's on 3rd Street, the Hells Angels block. Not an area in the East Village where people wanted to live at the time that I got this building, and I had a young son, and I wanted to be able to weave at night. So I was able to find this building that had the ability to work, live. It was zoned. And what's interesting about it is, frankly, the minute I stepped into this building, I felt this kind of energy that I didn't really understand what it was about. And it wasn't until 2013 when I went to a show in MoMA that it was a Klaus Oldenburg show about his storefront. And I immediately went in, and I don't know if anybody saw the show, but there were all these monographs on the outside of the show as I was walking in, and it had one that said 44 East 3rd Street on it. And I was like, what does that mean? And it also had a show that said December, 19th, 20th, and 21st. And my son's birthday was on the 20th. So it really caught my eye because I was like, oh, this isn't a coincidence. I have to pay attention. And so I did my research, and it turned out that this building has an amazing heritage, and it's that of one of people that are creating. It was the Rubin Gallery, which is where the happenings happened. And it was the Rubin Gallery from 59, 60, and 61. So I was not surprised in 2016, but like three years after I saw the show, that I got a call from MoMA, and MoMA had purchased the rights of the happenings, and they asked me if I knew about the building, and of course I did know about the building. They were so surprised actually that I knew about it, and I told them because I was at your show. And they said Dance Space, which is an organization that does performance art, dance performances in the East Village here, asked if they could bring 2 dancers who performed in that time period in 59 and 60. Simone Forte, she was in her 90s, and Eiko Otaka, and they both came over and they videoed them in the space, and they asked if I would host a dance performance in the studio, and I said, of course. And the picture here on the left was during that time and during the happenings, and the picture on the right is a performance where Otaka started. So they invited 22 people for 3 nights, and that's about how many people they wanted. It's kind of interesting because it was like quarantine level people, kind of spread out in the house. And Otaka started in the basement, and under one precedence is that if I would be weaving, she really wanted to hear the sound of weaving and all of this going on at the same time that she performed. And then she proceeded to go up through the entire building and danced in each spot. And so the building now, it really has this kind of, has changed its character, and it's really a part of, creating, and the creation operation that continues to build downstairs. So this is the downstairs where you just saw Eiko performing. This is during a lot of visits. We have a lot of visits. And like Saga said, we start from scratch. So we develop fibers and we warp up structures, and that's kind of our process. And then we go through weave structures and color work and stuff like that. So as you go up from the lower level studio underground to the first floor, this is the team. We're working on color work and different products all day long. It's a real kind of hands-on workspace. It's difficult right now, but we're trying to get together at least once or twice a week in the studio, and then everyone else is working remotely. This is on the second floor, and this is where my living space, this is the convergence between public and private. We do have a lot of architects and designers coming on a regular basis, and we're showing product and working on projects here on the second floor, which is a big open space. And this doubles on the right-hand side as my dining room. The pinup wall has a lot of my art on it and things like that. And then as you go up to the next level, this is where bedrooms are. And then at the end of the hall there is my other loom where I do a lot of weaving commissions and things like that. And then the stairwell goes all the way up to the roof. And so it's really a work live. And I've just been so blessed to be able to weave whenever I need to and be able to run the business on the lower level. And it's pretty much all in the family here for all the team and all my employees, everybody that works here. So this kind of is a transition from you know, the house into my artwork. And I wanted to talk about this because I think that there's a lot of signals that happen during your lifetime that we don't pay attention to. And that is that, you know, our life is happening for us. And basically, my father was sick in my home, and they gave him like 6 months to live, and I had him fly from Illinois to New York. And I started weaving wire hangers, cutting hangers, and I started weaving metal because he came from the scrap metal industry, and I wanted to weave something for him. And these little weave structures that I wove, I sent out to architects and designers. And from that moment, my art career kind of kicked into place, and I got a commission. This is about 4,900 dry cleaning hangers. And it wasn't as simple as that, but it was almost as simple as that, that I just started my muse, like that I was very charmed to start weaving materials that were found materials and found objects, because we have so much stuff around us. So that's some of the work, and this is where I'm sitting right now. Those are all the wire hooks that I've used on some of the pieces. And it's just been an amazing ride, you know, going from one art kind of idea to the next. This was another series I did, which was about 3 years after I worked on the wire. I worked on the wires for about 3 years, you know, had a really nice run. And then I'm like, I need to try something new. And what do I want to do? And I'd just gone through a divorce, and I was sitting with a ton of boxes of divorce papers. And I thought, you know, I really want to get past this. I don't want to feel dark the way I was feeling about what happened, and like I couldn't be in a relationship, and what was that all about, and all the darkness that surrounds that. And so I thought I would read my divorce documents, and then I would shred them, and then I would reweave them, and I would heal and transform myself, which is pretty much what I did. So this piece is about 57 by 57, and you know, it was sad and hard to read it, but at the same time, I was like, when I shredded the documents, it felt so great. So I kind of would laugh and cry at the same time, and then I wove this. This is called Pulp Fiction, and so it was kind of, I had to name it something kind of clever and funny and stuff like this. And then this was the second piece, again, about 57 by 57, and this was where I divided all the assets and everything of, you know, what he wanted and what I wanted, stuff like that, into two sides, and the chaos of one and the you know, very refined tightness of the other one, and stuff like that. So everything had a meaning. And then from there, about 3 years later, it's like I have this kind of thing with threes. So it's like things happen in threes. And so I started collecting Mylar balloons on the beach. And again, you know, I'm driven by these multitudes of things that you find, and trash, and how can you take things that have one meaning and turn them into something else. And it's so amazing how, and scary, how many Mylar balloons you find rolling around the beach. And so I collected all these balloons, and my son was like, man, you need to get a life, you know, like, what are you going to do with all these balloons? They were just like piling up at the beach. And I said, I don't know. I just feel like I'm going to get a commission at some point, and I just don't know what it's going to be. And then, you know, thoughts become things. So, you know, when you have thoughts out there, think positive thoughts. If you have negative thoughts, just go next, you know, don't even, you know, hold on to negative thoughts. But I thought, you know, I'm going to get a commission. I don't know where it's going to come. And then I get a call out of the blue, and my name had been given to the art, the person that was directing the art for a synagogue down in Dallas, and the art committee. And so this became, I had a mission to try to convince them that all the milestones in people's lives could be woven into this, you know, birthdays and you know, Valentine's Day and Father's Day and Over the Hill, you know, could be woven, and this could be a very transformational piece for the synagogue. And they finally convinced, they were very worried about my work and what it was made out of, but I convinced them to give me a chance. And then this was another, you know, like thing that I was asked and to work on. And this, and again, the whole, just, I can't stress the importance of the knowledge that our thinking has a lot of power. And I had done a mock-up for a 2-story atrium of neon. I got a call and from an architecture firm that asked if we could put some neon in the space. And this is an idea that we came up with. And at the same time, I had this mock-up, and I'm like, I need to find a home for the mock-up. And then I was asked to share some work in the Venice Biennale. And I'm like, well, how big can I send a big piece? And they said, well, how big? And I showed them, and they're like, yes. So, you know, I didn't have to find storage for it. And so that was at the Venice Biennale a couple of years ago. And this was the atrium. It's a 2-story atrium in a building in Dallas. It's very fun. So. And then for, you know, snap forward here, now we're going through this COVID. I just came up with this concept of making hand looms out of recycled boxes. So I just did a series of art pieces, kind of like, you know, the old Happenings days, where the piece is part of the box, part of the whole concept. And a bunch of friends from Fire Island asked me if I would do a weaving workshop. So we all had masks on, and we all sat around and wove one night. So that has been a fun experience. So about my work, how that started, this was me in 1982 with Boris Kroll. And I went through a series of jobs. I worked at, Unicavev for a while, and I worked at Brickell for a while. I had a great run at Knoll, and then I found that I really wanted to kind of, after 18 years at Knoll, I wanted to start a new kind of textile company and try to figure that out. And because I was already working in the carpet industry, so this is some of my work, my latest work. For Tarkett. And again, the whole concept of threes. I usually work with 3 companies at a time. I'm very monogamous when it comes to product categories. So 1 carpet company at a time. I'm on my almost 19th year at Tarkett. It was Tandis, which was CNA, and it's gone through all these changes. So now it's Tarkett. So this is a collection that's just being launched right now in September, called Light Shift Collection. And it's interesting, this picture I took, and it was an old Polaroid actually, from way back when I was a little kid growing up. And I always watched the light, you know, sparkling on the water. And I grew up in a small community in Illinois and at a lake. And so that like strikes me all the time, the way nature is kind of playing and displaying in front of us all the time. So it just so happens that September, we're having 3 different launches, one for Tarkett, one for Luum, this is called Second Nature. And this is really about how nature will always find a place to blossom. And this is a beautiful embroidery fabric that we designed, based on nature finding like cracks on the sidewalk or on buildings and stuff like that and protruding out. And so this will be launched next week. Excited about what's the name of the collection? Mutable Matter, sorry. I've got so many collections in my head. So this will be launched next week. I'm very excited about that for Luum. And then the last is a series for called Obscura for Skyline. And this is a brand new concept for them. And it has to do with applying vinyl like wallpaper, but vinyl sections on glass. And it's a sustainable material that we're using. And I really wanted to create these areas to create privacy for glass that had to do with the horizon line and perspective. And so that's what this collection is about. And then nature, it kind of just, I was blessed at the beginning of the year by being in India. I was in India starting in January, and I came home in April, and I started, I went there to do deep meditation training so that I could become a Vedic meditation initiator and teach people how to meditate. It's something that I've been practicing for about 4 years now. A very, very important part of my life is to kind of figure out how the mind works and how consciousness works, and how nature is there to provide for us. And so this, I was having a funny moment with Ganesh here. So anyway, so that's the talk. This is kind of a new venture for me. It's going to be called Fifth Floor Meditation, which is creating the studio into one floor being for meditation and practicing. And I've started teaching. I've taught about 8 people so far this summer since I've been back, even during COVID. And it's an in-person practice that and teaching that we do. And then we meditate every Sunday. So if you guys are interested, hop on my on the site on Sunday mornings, and we meditate together, and I give knowledge talks. So that's the latest. So Saga, back to you.
Cool. Thank you so much.
There.
All right.
Sorry, I went a little bit long. How long did I go?
No, that was
I went through a whole life in like.
I mean, we could go on about your projects that, you know. So I'm gonna ask you a little bit more about, like, you know, the beginning, how you started. I mean, you've been a leader in contract textiles for over 20 years now. You started in 1982.
Yeah.
When did you know you wanted to start your business? And that moment, can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I knew right after. I mean, the job that I had at Unicavev right before I had my son. I'm very kind of so transparent about everything. And when I was being interviewed for the job at Unicavev, I told the owners that I had just been married, and I was going to have a baby. Like, that was going to be something that would happen. And if they were okay with that, then that I knew I would work, but I didn't know that I would start my own business. But that and they were totally up for that. And and they said, you know, thanks for telling us. And I didn't get pregnant for another 1.5 years, and I had a baby. And you know, I had a little bit of a riff with the person that was kind of overseeing the company at the time. And they thought that the collection, the textile collection, the Unicavev collection, should be very mid to low priced products. And that was not what I felt should happen. And so we kind of, and he was in charge, and I was very strong about my opinions, and we had to kind of decide that I couldn't work like that. I didn't believe in it. I didn't think it was the right thing to do. And so we all shook hands, and and we parted, and there I was with a little baby. And I thought, you know, I'm going to start my own business. And you know, all the textile mills that I had all these relationships with called and said, what are you going to do? You know, because people move around. And I said, well, you know, I don't know. I'm going to probably, I don't know, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then a friend called that I'd worked with before in the carpet industry and said, what are you going to do? And then they're like, do you want to do some projects? And I'm like, I'd love to do those projects. And then, one thing in the mill said, do textiles. And so I just started developing a collection, and I was very lucky. I contacted the design director of Knoll at the time, Deborah Steele, and she had become a friend. And I said, you should really see this. This collection kind of looks like Knoll. I think it looks like Knoll. And she's like, we're not really looking. And so I was like, oh, dang, and so I was like going to start calling other textile companies. And I'm like, I'm going to call her back. And so she finally kind of saw it. And we were able to do the collection together. And then, she asked me to do another project and another project. So it became, then I was on my own. I had carpet. I started a company called Tuva Looms, and I had my own business. And then started working. And one thing led to another, and here I had this business. I started out with one employee, and then went 2 employees, and in the heyday, I think I was kind of up to 8, and which was a lot. So I'm down to 6 now. So.
Mm-hmm. And, I was a student at the Parsons MFA Textiles when I was in your studio. And one of the things I always observed was you have an eye firmly on price, when you develop your collections. So how did you develop that, you've been over the years. Tell us about.
I love that, Saga. When I was 13, I worked for my dad at the scrap metal yard, and I had to weigh these cars coming in, and then these people would drop their scrap metal off, and then they'd come back, and they'd have this much copper, and I'd have to look and see how much the copper cost, or steel. And I had to weigh materials and then pay them what they brought in. And so when I started at Boris Kroll, I would go to the mill with him on Tuesdays, and we would talk. It was in Paterson, New Jersey, and he was very, I needed to know how much it cost to spin how much the fiber cost, how much it was to spin the fiber, all aspects of it, what the finishing would cost. And so I was trained, it was like a boot camp. I was trained to understand how everything, how you develop materials from scratch to do well-priced products. And even a product that's $150 a yard, if it doesn't look like, it's 300, and it's really 150, then we haven't done our job. So what we try to do is just make the most luxurious products with the fibers, and that look so much more expensive than they really are. And I think that's kind of been the beauty of what we've been able to do in spinning and making our own materials and stuff like that.
I mean, it's interesting you bring up metal, because in terms of materiality, we often see metallics, whether it's color or even actual metals in your work. Tell us more about your approach to materiality and mixing hard and soft. And
okay, so it's we're working on these things. When it's all about energy in terms of creating materials, whether they're metallics, and we're extruding fibers that have metallic particles on it, which would create an environment which would have a lot more, luster and more energy. And then when we develop fibers that are more matte and, have that kind of finish, then we know that's a more soothing experience to be in a space like that, especially in when we're working on wall coverings and things like that, or floor coverings and stuff and stuff. But, I think that it's, what we try to do is see the equipment that the mills have, whether it's a carpet mill or a textile mill, and ask what kind of spinning qualities we can make, and then try to develop materials that will broaden our collections each time. We don't like to do the same thing over. There's no reason to do that, and we're not a studio that we feel like more is better. We feel like, you know, less is just enough, you know, like we don't come out with a ton of products, but the products that we do are very purposeful and have a reason. So we have to be very careful with what we're doing. And so I think that's some of the stuff that you saw. It's like we're very, very careful about exactly what we're doing, whether it's price or the way it's structured and stuff like that.
And coming to structure, you have an ABL Dobby floor loom in your basement, and you start with construction ideas on that, you know, that loom. Can you tell us more about how you came to putting, you know, this approach to design, because design development, because so many studios don't do that.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think my philosophy in design is that, and in life, you know, the more you touch something, the more you nurture something, the more you start from scratch and start building things, and will have a much longer performance in its lifetime. So our feeling is if we can start from the fiber level and create the fiber and put that on the loom and then create the structure, and, you know, you've seen it, we you know, create 30, 40 structures on every new structure that we're developing. And then we narrow it down. You know, it's all about editing at the end anyway, but the more you touch it, and then we get into the color aspect of it. So I think it's a really important aspect that, you know, when we're working with architects and designers, they're taking their time working, you know, from start to finish, you know, and I think that, you know, that's the same philosophy we do. One of the things, the conversations we had last week was, you know, is something, you know, are you happy with this? Or, and they're like, well, we could change the pattern. I don't know how much of a difference it's going to make. And I'm like, is it going to make the pattern better? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, then you have to change, you know, once you see something that needs to be changed or fixed, you have to fix it. So, because, and the same with architecture, you know, like, you know, you can walk through a space and you're like, I wonder what about that transition was about. And then, you know, my friends that are architects were like, yeah, I know, I knew I should have changed that way back when. So it's always a good thing when you know that something could be tweaked or changed to take the time to really make a difference. And it does make a difference when you do that. So I think the more we touch things, the more we handle them, the more, you know, we fool around with them. That makes the best products. I can look at, you know, all the products that are in our line, and I know which ones they are because they're in the line for like 20 or 30 years. You know, it's kind of crazy, but yeah.
Speaking of touching things, I feel like, you know, I get the sense that you are able to get your hands on, you know, treat quite abstract things, even light. Something is light, you treat it as a material, whether it's through luminosity, transparency, iridescence. You know, you tell us more about why you're drawn to light.
Well, you know, our senses are, you know, our whole core of our body and our whole consciousness, our senses play a major role in who we are. And I think that whether it's hearing or seeing, you know, or feeling, those are the first three senses that we really, you know, then it's tasting and smelling and stuff like that. But in our industry, those three are like so important. And light is really the first, you know, if you read any literature from, you know, any of the enlightened people, you know, light, you know, enlightenment, you know, it's all about light, you know. Light has a way of getting to us a lot quicker than anything else, really. You know, you notice light sparkling off of water. You notice light sparkling off of fiber. You notice that. Those are some of the things that you notice right away. And, you know, that's really one of your first kind of, when you know, you're, you know, studying consciousness, you know, it's like kind of one of the first conduits to something other than yourself. And so light's always been really sound, you know, hearing things, and not voices, but like hearing sounds and vibrations and stuff like that. I've always been aware of it as a kid, or feeling a breeze early, right before sun comes up in the morning. And those are things that all have to do with, you know, how, you know, the mechanisms of how life works. And so I've always been aware of it. For some reason, the picture of the lake house was like, gosh, I was so little, you know, but I would notice it. So.
And somehow these, you know, this approach, you know, we see it in your naming approach to your design work, you know, mutable matter. You know, all these names have a lot of tension. They're architectural. What is your approach to naming? Can you tell us?
That's a good one. Yeah, you got this, your experience it all. It's so much fun, right? You know, I believe that naming can make or break a collection, and it has to feel right. Everything has to work. And so we do a lot of, you know, we've learned through Lee and her work over the years. I have 30 years of their books in my library, you know, and have listened to the Lee's talks and Philip, and, you know, forever. And, you know, the connection with the world and consciousness and how it all works is like, you know, part of breathing for us. So when we come up with the very beginning phases of our collections, we, you know, we're talking about what's happening in the world and what's important in the world. And that becomes like the subliminal aspects of everything that those collections will be about. Like Second Sight was developed in, you know, in 2019 for 2020, or 2018 for 2020. And Second Nature was like, you know, we were talking about how important nature's role was going to be in 2020, and how everyone was going to have a different vision of things. Like, little did we know what was going to happen. And at the same time, you never know when your collections are going to be launched, you know. So everything became about nature, and all the names kind of had to do with that. So we've been very kind of interested in how nature is informing us these days. So that's kind of what that was all about. But you know, we're working on 21 and 22, and that has a different mechanism, and it's really like based on what life is going to be like after this, and kind of getting a feel for what we think is going to happen. And then we do a lot of like, you know, on the thesaurus, you know, in the thesaurus, or on the, I have all these thesauruses, and everybody else is like, we're on the computer, and I'm like, well, books, but I'm, you know, it's so funny. But you know, you go into these dark, you know, down the rabbit hole and finding names, and it's hard because there's a lot of products out there, and we can't use the same name as somebody else has. And but
you
that's
have favorites.
You know, I think some of my favorites. So one of the fabrics that I did for Knoll, it was called, oh man, what was the space above a building? Air rights. I think air rights for a drapery fabric. I think that was brilliant. And I was reading the newspaper, and at the time when people were buying air rights, and I was like, I hadn't really heard of that before. So I was like, I wrote it down, like drapery, air rights is like a fantastic, you know. Second Nature, I think, is quite beautiful. The the embroidery that we just showed, because it's about nature, and it's about the second kind of part of a life, you know, which is a plant growing in the crevice of architecture and stuff like that. And obscure, I think, is pretty good too. I think we've been doing some really, really good names lately. Light Shift for the carpet collection, and Parallel Rays, and yeah, I think I love naming. Naming is really important.
Yeah, it's very poetic, and it has a lot of, your names have so much energy.
Yeah, I think that all, there's that trifecta that, marketing and design and sales, and, customer service, of course, but the trifecta of that, everything has to have equal amounts of energy so that it's successful. So, we take a long time naming, and each color name we do a lot of research on as well. And, I'm not one to name a colorway something that doesn't kind of, I like the kind of onomatopoeic thing. I like that people would get it, like it sounds like or feels like what it should be, rather than kind of, guesswork and stuff like that. So I'm a little critical about stuff, a loving controller, let's just say, about stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. I think in your naming and, through all your work, I often heard you have phrases that you kind of mantras that you live by, like, thoughts become things, follow your charm. I think follow your charm is something that has stayed with me, and I keep thinking about it. Can you tell us more about where that phrase has led you?
Sure. So follow your charm. That came to me late, that came to me in the last 4 years with Tom Knowles as my Vedic meditation teacher, and the whole concept of charm and what it really means. It's like, are you charmed by that? And I think, it took me a long time to try to figure it out myself, because I would be charmed to do something, and like I felt it in my heart, I really want to do this. And then, the intellect comes into play, and then the intellect is like, why are you don't want to do that, or you'll never succeed in that, or whatever that voice is. And it would block my ability to clearly see that that's something that I wanted to do, and so I would go back, and when I started hearing this, that, during lectures on Vedic meditation, I'd be like, okay, it makes sense, because whenever I did follow my charm, like, I'm going to weave dry cleaning hangers. And, I'd have all these naysayers going, what the hell are you grabbing all these dry cleaning? You're just making a mess in this house, and I'd cut dry cleaning hangers, and it became a thing, it really became like, I got these huge commissions, and this and that was happening. And had I not followed my charm and thought, listen to myself and all these other people, like, tell me that this is the silliest idea ever, and it's making a mess, and why are you doing this, da 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 da, it wouldn't have happened. So the thing is when that thing happens, is you are in the flow of life. And a lot of times we don't listen to the charm, and we talk ourselves out of things all the time. And it's when you are called to follow your charm. That's not like, I'm charmed to go drink like 3 margaritas tonight. That's not like following your charm. That's not like that, not what I'm talking about. It's more like, I really, it's kind of like the way Tom would say it. He'd be like, I really feel like a box of figs right now. And it's like, but I don't have any figs. And do I want to go out right now and get some figs? And it's just like, I really do feel like figs. So go get the figs. And who knows, you're going to run into somebody that could change your life. You don't know, but it's when you don't do that, what comes into your heart and into your mind to do, that you're not allowing that kind of effortless flow to happen in your life. And I've always, at this point now, I definitely follow my charm, and I don't let myself talk myself out of things any longer. Because it's like everything good happens when you follow your charm. It's really there for you. And if you can't tell, like, play a game with yourself. All right, I'm not going to do that. Why am I not going to do that? And just have this kind of opposite perspective on it, and then like make a decision.
Mm-hmm. There's some questions from the audience that I was going to ask you anyway, so I'm going to pull those out. This is our last, section of the talk.
Okay.
Everybody, please, our audience, please feel free to add more questions using the Q&A button at the bottom. But I'm going to ask you the first one, which is how much, sustainability is a big has a big place in your practice. And you know, you talked about the mylar and the dry cleaning hangers. Can you tell us more about sustainability and the future? Um,
Yeah, I mean, this is a big, big deal. We as consumers have to be really, really careful when we buy things and make decisions that are like lifelong decisions on anything that you purchase for yourself. And, you know, as we do product development, again, it's not about a lot more being better. It's about less is enough, you know, and, you know, doing the right thing in terms of sustainable materials that you can buy. You don't have to, you don't have to specify things that aren't either from recycled content, from materials that are now biodegradable, healthy biodegradable materials, wools, things that natural fibers and things like that. And even with our clothes, kind of changing the way you can, you know, mutate your clothing is just so interesting now. People are cutting up clothes and putting them with other things and just creating your kind of own who you are and aesthetic. But I think it's really, really important and how we decide. And I think this time being at home so much has also been a real eye-opener for everyone in terms of what we eat, how we consume things, what we throw away. It's very, very important. A lot of materials, again, we're kind of looking at a lot of different materials. Some of them are going to be too costly to come out with, that are, you know, so, you know, scientific and, you know, developed from, you know, fungus or, you know, that we're not going to get the color that we need, and it's going to, you know, fade and things like that. And do we really want that? Or how do we want to develop things like that that could be way too expensive? And, you know, I think less is more is really kind of the way. I don't know if that's kind of the answer that the question was looking for, but
I'd love to learn also, you know, sustainable. On one hand, it's your intention, and then you have mills on the other hand who support you. Do you find that mills are more aware or more ready, or, you know, what is their role in helping you deliver on sustainability?
so a lot of the mills are working with materials that are recycled or are post-consumer materials, or you know, we're upcycling t-shirts that are then chopped up and made into fiber and things like that from the fashion industry. The fashion industry is like, oh, it's just so, you know, between fashion and architecture and the amount of poundage and waste that goes into the landfill, it's scary. So the mills are all trying to step up and come out with what they can do. And the dye stuffs that they're using, they're all clean materials, are really, really important in terms of the water stream and stuff like that. So we continue to work with mills that are having that bent towards sustainability. Of course, I mean, if we're going to come out with products, that's the products that we want to come out with. And on the floor covering side, definitely, I mean, Tarkett was one of the best with, and CNA in the day, you know, early on, with the recycled windshields that became the backing material and stuff like that. So we've been working with companies, you know, that's their protocol, really.
We have another question that connects to the mill question. Do you work with domestic mills, and I know you work with international mills and domestic mills as well, but what has been your story with domestic mills? And
so with domestic mills, we primarily work with them on the development of the fibers and creating recycled materials and post-consumer materials. So we do a lot of domestic product development. I mean, it's important to keep our domestic mills running. And finding mills that have unique kind of abilities, like the embroidery mill that we're working with. I mean, and giving them new life. It's been a great relationship in terms of, I don't think they had done anything like what we are showing them. You know, they were the primary embroiderer for the white stars on navy blue fabric for the American flag. You know, I mean, that's all that was running in the plant when we got there, and they're so delighted to have something different than like shut your eyes and see sparkly stars in the contrast level was so hard. It's interesting going down there.
We have a question from Preeti, who is the director of the MFA program that I graduated from this year. She asks, do you see the interior textile industry changing dramatically, structurally, post-COVID? And what should design students and new graduates plan for?
Ooh, great question, Preeti. I think we've gone back and forth on the sanitization of materials and what that means. And I'm keeping that kind of at an arm's length because I think, I don't think we're gonna just be totally like, I don't think that's gonna be the issue. I think what we need to be able to do is to create, and I would say to the students that are out there, create beautiful materials, create what is driving you, and be unique. Try to do embellishments and all different things. I think that's like one of the most important things is to, follow your charm, follow what's driving you, what you're interested in, because that's what is going to get you to the next level, whether you're going to work in the corporate, textile world or in the fashion world. It's being unique. We're all unique individuals and we all have a reason, and follow what that reason is. And the most creative things will come, and you'll be most happy when you're doing that, because once you get into a job, you see, I mean, you were first to see, it's like, oh my God, how big do the floats have to be? And how does this work? And, and so how do you flex your muscles and when you have to conform to corporate interiors? And I think for us, it's creating, beauty and things that don't look like anything you've seen before, and finding manufacturers that can build from what they have and make new things. Did I answer that question?
I think so. Yeah, that's a good,
And you know what? The other thing is, I think that one of the things about the school that I wanted to the precedent that is like, it's not just about the product that you're making, but it's like, it's the story and how you tell the story and why it's important to create that. And that's one of the beauties of what I saw in the MFA program that you were in when we would go to the open houses. There was a storyline that went from start to finish, and you really got to see that in the work that was shown there. And I think that's really important. Mm-hmm. Because it's about telling the story. It's about telling your story, but it's also telling the story of the brand of the companies that you're working with. And I think that the storytellers are the ones that are, will be remembered,
And there's another question. I think it also connects to what you were just talking about, which is, how do you balance? So I'm going to rephrase it a little bit. How does your commercial work and your conceptual work, artistic work, how do they The question is, how do you balance it? But I'm going to say, how do they feed each other?
Yeah, how do they inform one another of one another? You know, I feel like the work that that I do on the art side, there's a fragility to it in a way, because it's like even if I'm working with steel or whatever, that it's all about, like, you know, exploiting the material for what it is and make the material be what that is. And, you know, the fragility of the balloons breaking, I cut them and they break, and, you know, people would get frustrated in weaving classes. And I'm like, well, it is what that is. I mean, and so knowing that whatever the material is that you're using has a unique quality to it. And what's really, really important for us is that whatever we're developing, we want that quality of that fiber or that material to be in your face, you know, like, so that you can actually see what it is, like the guts of the material is like right there. And that's what's always, and we don't try to control it so much. That's why I think our textures are so lovely, is that, you know, we're not trying to control the machine. You know, we may pack 4 threads in a shed, or we may just push the fiber to the face. I mean, it has to perform, you know, to the standards, but we always try to kind of explore how either the delicacy or the shine or what's important about the structure that we're developing to get that product out there. You know, how can we push it as far as we can and actually pass codes and have a great price point and all of that. And I think that that's what my artwork has informed my my commerce work, is like, it's really about the materiality of everything. Mm-hmm. And like really making the materiality be the thing that you're responding to. And architecture, you know, all of our weave drafts look like architecture built, you know, the structures of buildings. And I love that discussion, because I think, you know, bringing the exterior of buildings inside and then allowing the fiber to be in there adds a whole other kind of layer of structure. So it's the structure, organic and structural at the same time.
I'm going to combine a few questions now and end with this one, which is, you know, we're in a time of total change. We're living history right now. And what is the future of your practice looking like? Do you think the old, you know, the showroom model is going to survive for places like the D&D building and the PDC? Do you think, how are things shifting?
I think people are always going to need samples. I think they're always going to want to feel the tactility of the fabric and the carpet and see what the glass looks like. I think there's always going to be a need for materials. That's never going to go away. At one point, I thought it was all going to be, you know, you're just going to print it out and look at samples and stuff like that. That's not going to happen. You know, I think that there's going to be, we see a lot of partnerships. I think there's going to be collaborative libraries of materials, where in the big cities, there's going to be like, this is my premonition, is like, there's going to be, you know, a big hubs of product that architects can, you know, sign up to go, and they can, you know, have presentations and things like that there, where a mixture of all these materials, architectural materials, may be found. I think architecture firms are always going to have libraries, and they're always, everyone is going to always need that. The residential showrooms, I just don't know. I haven't done enough exploration on the residential side of the D&D building and how this is all going to play itself out. But the internet is there, and it's big, and it's, you know, the fast way of getting samples. So companies really need to pay attention to what their websites are like and how easy they are to do business with people. Mm-hmm. But I think, I'm thankful that I don't think samples are going to go away. I think people need the tactility and they need to touch. And I think they need to hear the story too, frankly. And I think they need to experience going to mills. And I think, you know, that's not going away. I think the experience of going into people's mills, you know, and kind of, or their studios and stuff online as an artist and stuff. I love that because you can experience so many more people. But there's nothing like going into a place and experiencing it. Yeah.
Well, Suzanne, thank you so much for bringing us into your space today and sharing your story. So lovely to see you again.
It's
Um, Thank you to our audience who stayed with us for the whole hour. We have programming, New York Textile Month programming every day of the week, and more Textile TV coming. And the next session with me is next Wednesday at 1 p.m. with Judy Ross. So please join us again. Thank you again, Suzanne. This has been wonderful.
Thank you, Saga. It's so good to see you. Bye.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for asking me.